Day 1068 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 830,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,720 in the past day, with new records being broken for paid sign-up bonuses to join the SMO. Take, for example, Russia's Samara region now offering a one-time sign-up bonus payment of 4 million rubles, comprising of 3.5 million regional and a $500,000 federal, which is roughly speaking a $40,000 sign-up bonus, equivalent to about 4 years' wages for the average Russian. It's almost as if the region isn't reaching its recruitment quotas as determined by the Kremlin. The poster also advertises earning over 200,000 rubles per month, but there's plenty of frontliner Russian reports now showing that there is constant MOD accounts department errors leading to those monthly payments never being made. Meanwhile, the Russian MOD is finding all sorts of creative ways to siphon off these provided sign-up bonuses. Apart from new laws they're introducing to allow confiscation of the bonus, there is also the most common method of immediately advising soldiers receiving said sign-up bonus that they have to purchase their own equipment, all because the very same Ministry of Defense that's orchestrating this war does not have the resources to help with new intakes in the most fundamentally basic of ways. Then to take a look at some of the hardware losses, so 9 tanks, 4 APVs, 14 artillery, and one 47-year-old Zelensky, who just had his birthday today, January 26. Now, as for the ongoing artillery losses, this chart tracks the percentage of Russian artillery losses by barrel type month by month. It shows some intriguing trends across the timeline, from the start of the SMO until now in late January 2025. Initially, losses of the 122 and 152mm standard barrels dominated, reflecting their widespread deployment as core artillery pieces in the early phases of the war. But there has certainly been an overall decline in usage for those crucial Soviet artillery calibers. Simultaneously, larger calibers like the 203mm and 240mm show those being all but phased out of the war. But most notably was the uptick in the losses of the 120mm barrels. These include the shorter-ranged mortars, including the 2B11 Sanis and the M120 Molots, both typically with a firing range of just about 7 or 8 kilometers, and that's 4 or 5 miles. So the overall change in platforms used and destroyed, if sustained, strongly suggests Russia's manufacturing and supply challenges are showing to be quite evident as this conflict progresses. Then headed across to the map and into Ryazan of Russia, with no rest for its oil refinery, as another swarm of Ukrainian drones targeted the already burning facility, with local reports confirming multiple explosions and heavy smoke emanating from the facility, which had already been struck just 2 or 3 days earlier. The situation has drawn a significant response from the emergency services, with numerous fire trucks racing to the scenes, as Russian telegram channels describe the blaze as intense and widespread, indicating that the refinery has been cordoned off due to the severity of the attack. And so it's a troubling trend for Russian air defenses, which appear to have once again failed to intercept the incoming UAVs, allowing Ukraine to maintain pressure on critical infrastructure deeper within Russian territory. And overall, Russia's inability to achieve a swift victory with the initial SMO invasion has given Ukraine the time to evolve into a formidable adversary, now capable of serially producing drones and missiles that strike deeper and deeper into Russian territory. What began as a calculated gamble for quick dominance has become a protracted conflict, with Ukraine's growing technological advancements redefining the stakes and forcing Russia to confront the long-term consequences of its early strategic missteps. Then briefly headed to the southwest of Russia, as it looks like Ukraine has again used the Chuklin B long-range UAVs, being that they were also used in a recent attack on Rostov about a week or two ago. Then far, far away, residents of the southern districts of Russia's Abakan region were left without electricity last night due to an unexpected saboteur. The rodent made its way to the equipment, damaged the cables, and caused a short circuit. As a result, part of the city is in darkness, and a further sign of Russia's decaying Soviet infrastructure. I also seem to recall that a rat caused severe damage to a hydroelectric dam in Russia's Krasnodar region a year or two ago, leading to widespread power outages back then as well. Then headed back west and into the Ukrainian map today, we're starting off in the northeast. The 1st Presidential Brigade and the 92nd Assault Brigade repelled a Russian attack on multiple fronts of the Kupiansk direction in what is another very attritional sector on the map as it comes to Russian offensive operations. Then headed down the map in a seemingly change of pace as the Russians raised a flag near to Pokrovsk. But it was a short-lived event, as a Ukrainian drone had other plans. And look at that, nice shot. Then further south, which is still no stranger to activity, I'm talking about Zaporizhia here, as Ukraine's 65th Mech Brigade, called Ronins, seen performing a series of strikes near Tokmak on Russian logistics including trucks and Buhanka vans, vehicles of which provide critical materials to the front, but in failing to do so makes for outcomes such as these. So this is a Russian position somewhere, in this case on the Kursk front, where due to Russian motor transport not getting sufficient water past the Ukrainian FPV blockade, it's had to make for makeshift solutions like these, becoming quite necessary with the melting of snow to cover their water needs. So a larger issue emerges here as many of the Russian troops find themselves dedicating an overwhelming portion of their time and resources to mere survival rather than engaging in battlefield prep. This continues to be an ongoing concern for their army. Then headed down across to the Black Sea as a Ukrainian small armoured artillery boat armed with a Vampire SAM downed a Russian Kh-59 cruise missile over the Black Sea. This SAM utilizes the APKWS, which stands for Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, which transforms standard 70mm rockets into laser-guided precision munitions for air defense. And with a range of about 5 kilometers and able to take out Russian cruise missiles, this is a nifty platform produced by BAE Systems of the UK that complements Ukraine's multi-layered approach to air defense. Then taking a look around further, also in the east, another of the many passed by destroyed Russian armored columns somewhere on the front, recorded by the invading forces. The sight surely fails to instill any confidence among the Russian soldiers heading towards the active zone, as many of them see and record this chilling reality for themselves. Then also plenty of action, so we saw a Ukrainian quadcopter FPV destroying a Russian turtle tank in its hangar, a job well done. Then also reports of the 412th Regiment of Unmanned Systems, known as Nemesis, destroyed yet another Buk M3 air defense system. These air defense systems losses are really piling up now. Then headed slightly west on the map as Transnistria is entering a deepening crisis. The Russian-aligned/occupied region, cut off from its free gas supply, which Russia themselves oddly stated that it was them who cut off the supply, is causing this breakaway Moldovan region to face a severe energy crisis. 300,000 residents are, or are soon to be, left without heating or hot water, and industrial activity has ground to a halt. Ukraine, eyeing a strategic opportunity, is ready to supply coal to Moldovan thermal plants in exchange for electricity. This move can undermine Moscow's grip on the region, turning the tables on Russia's energy blackmail tactics. If successful, it could pave the way for Transnistria's future reintegration into Moldova, a significant geopolitical shift in the making. Also noting this breakaway Moldovan region, no surprises here that everywhere you look, it's the Russian Cyrillic alphabet language shown, instead of the Latin alphabet of the Moldovan language, which just happens to be Romanian. Then also, and hard to ignore, right next door in Slovakia, as massive protests have swept across the country, with hundreds of thousands making to the streets to voice their opposition to Prime Minister Robert Fico. Demonstrators in over 30 cities chanted slogans like "Enough of Fico" and "We are Europe," condemning his pro-Russian stance and recent visit to Moscow. Fico has remained defiant, rejecting calls for his resignation and insisting that any government change must happen through elections. Meanwhile, and speaking of elections, Belarus is holding its own presidential elections today. Lukashenko's victory seems assured, with the opposition crushed and 500,000 Belarusians fleeing since the last election. Widespread resignation makes a challenge unlikely, and most of the opposition candidates have already called it a success for Uncle Luka. So his already 30-year rule now looks to be extended for its 7th term, which is completely unimpressive in that it's just another day in Belarus. Then headed across to some news for today. So Sweden is gearing up to announce its largest military aid package to Ukraine since the full-scale invasion began. The new package, totaling an impressive $7.1 billion in US dollars for 2025 to 2027, includes plans to repair CV-90s, the infantry fighting vehicles, right in Ukraine. Additionally, Sweden is collaborating with BAE Systems to set up armored vehicles maintenance facilities on Ukrainian soil. This move not only boosts Ukraine's defense capabilities, but also fosters local industry, creating jobs and ensuring quicker repairs. It's a strategic win for Ukraine, reinforcing its resilience against ongoing aggression, with Sweden's unwavering support continuing to make a significant impact. Then to some Russian hardware news, as another Russian train with North Korean M1978 170mm Koksan self-propelled guns spotted traveling through Russia's Trans-Baikal territory in the country's far east. The Russian MOD has been finding a shortage of heavy artillery and rely on North Koreans for some time now. Now, I've been highly critical of the Koksan SPGs on numerous occasions in the past, but suffice it to say, with its abysmal accuracy, ridiculously slow reload rates, and operating on a shell caliber not produced or supported within Russian military structures, it makes for an SPG that may become extremely impractical, especially in dynamic combat. So it really remains to be seen what impact these have in the batches of 1 or 2 dozen that come through from time to time, but really nothing to show for themselves even up to this date now, and they've been coming through for at least a couple of months now. Then to another Russian hardware update, and what you should expect to see here is a modern armored personnel carrier for Putin's boys to be carrying a wounded cargo 300 out of conflict zones. But it's more reminiscent of 1916 than 2025. Or in fact worse, given that back then horses were commonly used for evacuation. Then to some more news, President Zelensky announced Ukraine's readiness to facilitate gas transit from Azerbaijan to Europe. During a recent meeting with Azerbaijani President Aliyev, Zelensky highlighted Azerbaijan's capacity to export 25 billion cubic meters of gas annually, which is single-handedly about a third of what Russia sent to Europe last year. This comes on the heels of Ukraine and Russia suspending gas flows through Ukraine, a decision that hasn't sat well with Slovakia and Hungary, or for that matter Transnistria. Zelensky's message is clear: Ukraine won't let Russia profit from gas sales transiting its country any longer, while also promoting alternative energy sources for the continent. Then to some more news, and at the end of last week, Vladimir Putin delivered a message to Russians, effectively declaring the war's continuation during an interview. He dismissed any near-term peace talks, framing the conflict as part of a broader struggle against the West. Putin also questioned Zelensky's legitimacy, speak for yourself Putin, and bizarrely echoing his delusions of Soviet-era global dominance. For Russians, this means enduring sacrifices, while for Ukraine, it's an almost obvious reminder that peace isn't on Putin's agenda, at least not one that respects Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, an argument could be made here that this is Putin's attempt to show himself coming from a position of strength leading into negotiations, but if he stands by these words, then it will only further isolate Russia internationally and be of extreme detriment to his own population. After all, the economic epicenters of Russian industry are getting militarily targeted like they're going out of style, and very surely at a rate that will not slow down. Then to some Russian economy news, and in a recent Moscow State University Board of Trustees meeting, Putin appeared shocked by reported average salaries for Moscow residents, 140 to 160,000 rubles per month, or about $1,500 per month. But even then, the reality is actually far more grim, with the actual average salary hovering around 80,000 to 100,000 rubles per month, or $800 to $1,000 per month. And that's before we consider the rampant inflation in the country. Russian media outlet RBC quickly deleted footage of Putin's stunned reaction, clearly not wanting the public to see how disconnected their leader was. But this is the internet, so hard to get that one permanently deleted. Meanwhile, Putin continues to pour resources into military spending, leaving many Russians to wonder where all that money is really going. And also, given these salary levels, evidently Russian scientists can earn more when signing up for an SMO contract, as opposed to what they can get on the home front. So it's surely a wake-up call for many in the country, but will it be for Putin? Probably not. Then to some more Russian economy news. Russia's coal industry is teetering on the edge, facing a potential collapse as global prices remain low. In 2024, seaborne export revenues plummeted 22%, with China and South Korea slashing imports. All Russian coal companies reported losses, and many smaller firms are now drowning in debt. The State Development Corporation is preparing to take over bankrupt assets, a clear sign of a desperate measure. And while coal may contribute less to Russia's GDP than oil and gas, it's crucial for many mono-profile cities. If this trend continues, the fallout could be severe, not just economically, but socially as well. Then headed across to an unusual funny to round it all off for today, guys. And in some of the finest literature to come out of the Russians during the war, where you can have a full read of it on the screen, as Russian soldiers are venting their frustrations over North Korean artillery shells. The quality? Abysmal. One soldier describes the rounds as, quote, unworthy of being called shells, detailing issues like improper weight distributions and even political newspapers from Kim Jong-il's reign back in 1987 clogging the barrels. So it's a grim picture of supply chain failures of subpar military aid. But it isn't just about bad ammo, it reflects a deeper problem. Russia's reliance on questionable partnerships. It's backfiring, leaving troops ill-equipped and demoralized. So it's no wonder these soldiers are venting their frustrations, feeling like they're being sent into battle with nothing but a handful of rusty nails and a prayer. This one's actually a little bit darker than I had expected. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!